Hello and welcome to Cal Cinema Center. I am your host, and today we'll be discussing The Odyssey, directed by Christopher Nolan, starring Matt Damon, Anne Hathaway, and a bunch of others, and it's based on not Homer Simpson, but Homer from long ago, who might not even be fucking real, who made this poem. This may not be my favorite movie of the year. It probably won't be, but it is certainly one of the biggest. So I've had a lot of time to ruminate on this since I've seen it, and I've been trying to really get my thoughts here on this because this is a big and fucking dense piece of work here. However, I want to discuss some other things. So, Homer's The Odyssey. Haven't read it. Yeah, so I'm going into this pretty blind. This is my first real experience with this poem, so I won't be doing this as an adaptation versus the original. We're just going to be looking at how does it work as a movie contained within itself, because frankly, I am not super invested in that story, and I'm not super invested in other things that culture warriors seem to be mad at for some reason. Just, I don't really care about almost all of that stuff. I am talking about how this stuff works within the film and not within whatever other outside criteria that people want the film to reflect. And so another thing I'd like to note about Christopher Nolan is that I generally like his movies, for sure. I don't think I dislike any of them. But he is someone who, when I was getting more into movies, I was really in love with his work. But, now that a few years have gone past and I've gotten more pretentious, let's just say that, his work has generally gone down for me and it hasn't stayed in my mind as much. Although I still very much like his work and I still was very much looking forward to this. Although I didn't know what to expect going into this, honestly, because this is a huge gamble. However, I gotta say that I think it paid off for the most part. For starters, I think the biggest plus for almost anyone going to see this is that this is a true spectacle, and it is a massive, massive story. This film had a $250 million budget, and you really feel it in every aspect of the filmmaking. It uses practical effects all the fucking time. It uses as little CG as humanly possible, and it allows for this sense of feeling lived in this world, and all these fantasy elements, they feel real, and I really appreciate that. And I think it helps that Nolan knows how to direct a really exciting sequence. There's a bunch of really exciting sequences here. It is constantly jumping from exciting sequence to exciting sequence to exciting sequence. It feels like I would like to spend more time in some sequences, but it is just so immensely well directed and well made. All of the craft elements here, from the costuming to the production design, are immaculate. They're truly immaculate, because it's just it brings this world to life in such a beautiful way that I never looked at a shot in this movie and was like, oh, that's fake. Even though I know it's all fake, it's just, I looked at it and I was just like, this feels fucking amazing. This is so cool. And it sucked me in. And I think that's thanks to both Nolan's directing here and also just the craft elements on display. I think they're truly spectacular, and it's the best part of the movie for almost anyone going in. It's why I think it's really difficult to not at least appreciate this movie on some level, because it is operating on a level that most Hollywood blockbusters just don't even get to ever. Especially if we're looking at stuff the latest Marvel movie. They don't operate on this level. It's constantly, we have to use the volume, we have to use green screen, we can CG that in later, we can CG in Nick Fury's gun, even though we can't just make a fucking gun prop for some reason. It's really stupid. But this movie looks so damn good, and it really just puts everyone else to shame in a lot of ways with how much practicality it uses. Another big plus here that I'd like to go over is Ludwig Göransson's score. Magnificent. He's truly at the top of his game. I don't think I've seen a composer excite me this much in so long. This score is also quite different from his others because it's way less motif driven than any of the other ones he's done. It is very much more atmospheric and provides a heartbeat to each of the scenes, and it syncs pretty well with the edit, I must say. I'll get into that a little bit later. But yes, I do think that his score here is pretty great. I don't think it's as good as his scores for Sinners and Oppenheimer, but I do think it gives this movie a distinct feeling, and it's quite powerful. And one little touch I liked is that when Odysseus is stringing his bow, and he like plucks it for the first time, it does like a little like string sound effect in the score, and it's really, really fucking cool. That is just such a cool fucking touch. And so the cinematography as well, Hoyt van Hoytema, I believe is the name of Chris Nolan's cinematographer here. Excellent work on that part. I don't think it quite stands out as much as it does in other Christopher Nolan movies, mainly because so much of the spectacle here isn't necessarily the way the elements are being framed, but the elements themselves. But I think it still is really well framed. Lots of really nice colors, especially during the Troy sequence. Both the cinematography and the score are top notch. The edit, this is a controversial aspect of the movie, I'd say. Some people don't really like the edit. I personally loved it. I love the edit and I love the pacing here. It's maybe a little too fast at points, but I did not feel that 3-hour time at all. It moved and it moved and it moved, and I was constantly engaged with almost everything I was seeing. And I think that is really down to the editing here and how the scenes are pieced together. I was never really bored, even during a lot of scenes that a lot of people consider slower, or a lot of people would consider slower. I didn't really feel the length in any of those moments. I thought it was just a truly wonderful edit. And it's also kind of like symphonic in a way. It really complements the music well, and it allows for this perfect kind of harmony going on, this harmonizing between the elements of the craft. And this is also done in Oppenheimer, but I definitely noticed it more here than I did with that movie. Okay, one big thing to note with this movie is that the story is kind of episodic. It is a lot of Odysseus traveling to a place and then running away from that place and traveling to another place. It's very much like one-off sections of the movie. I thought it was pretty well executed for what it was. It never felt like it was tedious at any point. It never felt like I was just seeing the same damn thing over and over. I felt like all the sections were quite varied. Even if, in my opinion, some segments of the movie weren't as strong as others, I didn't really care about the giants that much. I didn't really care for that section that much, but I did care for stuff like the Circe section, or the section in the underworld. I loved those scenes. But yeah, I didn't care as much for some segments, but other segments I think work really fucking well. And another thing I really liked is the non-linear nature of the storytelling. Christopher Nolan is obsessed with playing with time in his movies and playing with how time works in his movies. And here is really interesting because it's one of the only movies of his that doesn't play with time as like the central gimmick, but still plays with time. Generally speaking, in a Christopher Nolan movie, like with Interstellar or with Memento, especially Memento, I'd say, he's very upfront about the way he's playing with time. And even like Oppenheimer, he's very upfront with how he's playing with time and how he's telling this non-linear story. Here, it's non-linear, but it feels like a little bit more solid. It doesn't feel like the central gimmick of the movie. It feels like just a way he's choosing to tell the story. And it feels very natural, as it's talking about events from the Iliad and the fall of Troy. But it's also starting kind of in the middle of this story where Odysseus is already washed up on this island and being fed lotus flowers. I think it is really effectively told in this nonlinear story, and it never felt show-offy with that nonlinearity. It is a really interesting take on Nolan's usual sense of time. It is still very much about time in a way, but it feels a lot more like that's in the background and a little bit subtler, which I don't really expect from Nolan since he's a very like loud and upfront director. I wouldn't call him a subtle director, but I liked the way he played with time in this. Now, one of the big features of this movie is its gigantic cast. And so I'm going to highlight some ones that I personally enjoyed, whose roles in the stories really interested me. Matt Damon as Odysseus. He's so fucking good. I was kind of doubting it. I wasn't sure. I felt like he would be kind of whatever, because Matt Damon is like a very good everyman. And so a lot of his best performances are kind of understated or more like personality performances. However, this is up there with his best. This is up there with Good Will Hunting and The Talented Mr. Ripley. And then I'd say this one as well. Those three are his best performances to date. I think he does a great job of showing this character's humanity and inner conflict, as well as just being a really good, like, charismatic lead. He's a great personality here, but he also shows his character's, emotional journey and torment as he's going through this really long journey, and he's being changed and reshaped by all the things that have happened to him and that he's done. It's a really reflective movie in a way, and I think Matt Damon is at the core of why that works. Anne Hathaway is also fantastic. She gives, in my opinion, an Oscar-worthy performance. Maybe I'm saying that too soon, but she just brings it to every scene. I love how the camera frames her. I think the way that the camera will often frame her behind this sliding door and you get to see only part of her face, it's really cool, and it gives her such an immense presence. Even if she doesn't have that many scenes in the movie, she's probably the third most prominent character in the movie, but she doesn't have that many scenes when compared to Odysseus or Telemachus, but she just has so much presence. You can feel her presence throughout the movie, and her scenes, she has like multiple monologues that are so good, where she really, really brings it. And I really like that this character feels like she has agency. She feels like she's going through as much of a journey as Odysseus is, in a way, as she is waiting for this person to come home with no answer. And she kind of has to contend with this patriarchal world where she can't just rule by herself. She needs to have someone sit in the throne. She has to contend with the fact that in this world, it's treated as though the throne is empty, even though she's been running shit for years. And she has to constantly contend with that disrespect and the disrespect of these suitors that are here. I thought that her emotional journey was really well done. I would have liked to see her do a little bit more. I think she did a fantastic job of bringing this internality of the character to light, and I really enjoy that. Samantha Morton as Cersei is only in the movie for like 10 minutes, but she is brilliant. I really like this segment of the movie, as I mentioned earlier. And she gives this maniacal, but also like very human energy of it. She's almost fed up with a lot of the dangerous and horrible things going on in the world. And I think that her character and her character's point of view is one of the most important parts to the movie thematically. John Leguizamo plays basically Odysseus's right-hand man, Odysseus's most loyal servant, and he doesn't get any like huge moments per se, but he's a very fun screen presence, and I always enjoyed seeing him pop up. Robert Pattinson plays a very cartoony villain, I'll say, but he's really good at it. He's really good. He plays the main suitor trying to go for Penelope and Hathaway's character. He just is so much fun, especially during the third act. I really love the way he handled this character. And it isn't like the most three-dimensional performance, but it is a very enjoyable screen presence. And it's a very memorable character thanks to that. Jon Bernthal is also married to Helen of Troy, played by Lupita Nyong'o, who is also pretty good, but doesn't get that much screen time. Especially, considering how much they fucking bitched about her being in the movie. Like, she doesn't even get that much to do. She's kind of just there. But Jon Bernthal is really good. He gets a lot of fun moments, although he isn't like super standout. Same thing with Elliot Page. Elliot Page plays a short-lasting role, but a really important role in the story, especially in terms of the impact the character leaves on Odysseus. I think the character of Sinan's role in the story is really well done, and I think Elliot Page played it really well, particularly in one of the later sequences. It made it one of my favorite sequences in the movie, that's all I'll say. Benny Safdie as Agamemnon. I hope I said that right. I just, M's and the N's, I get them messed up. He doesn't get much to do. He's only in it for like 5 minutes, but he has so much screen presence. He is so cool. And the thing that's crazy to me is that it's Benny Safdie. Look at this guy. He looks like a goofball. He looks like an oddball. He played fucking Bowser Jr. last. And he's fantastic. He's really good as this like very intimidating presence. Mind you, they don't really show his face much, which I think helps build the intimidating presence as well. But I think he does a really good job with portraying this kind of character that I didn't think he was capable of doing. And now then, I think one of the biggest elements of the Odyssey as well is the themes. I think for starters, there is very much a core idea That's kind of related to the core idea of Oppenheimer, where it's like Odysseus believes that him taking down Troy is one of the biggest factors in the destruction of people's goodwill and good nature. It's a theme about the increasingly like meanness and cruelty of the world and how people are ignoring Zeus's law, which is basically anyone could be a god, so you have to extend kindness to strangers. It's kind of like the golden rule: treat others the way you want to be treated, and how this is kind of fading away because ultimately this story only exists because of what happens in the Iliad, because of stupid shit, basically. It is stupid, selfish, spiteful shit. They call Helen of Troy's face the face that launched 1,000 ships. And that's a ridiculous thing, but it's something that's real and tangible because people go to war for selfish reasons. And that's what this story is trying to explore, is that this sense of ultimate like selfishness and lack of meaning in so much conflict. And also how Odysseus kind of regrets his own role in that and his own deception and his own lying, and just in general how he encourages that cycle to continue, which is also why I think the Cersei role is so important. It's a part of the story that specifically highlights how cruel and vulgar these characters are without even realizing it. And I think that's why the Sinon character is also important, but I'll leave that to the movie. I think I'm giving too much away here. I just think this is a very powerful story about a character who believes that he has played a role in humanity's folly and selfishness, and how much he deeply fucking regrets that, and how that has kind of transformed him into someone who believes he can't go home anymore. It's a very powerful set of themes, and it's really what powers the movie as a whole and what makes it truly special, in my opinion. Okay, now then, we gotta talk about the negatives, because this is, in my opinion, far from a perfect movie. So firstly, I'm going to talk about the dialogue quickly. I didn't mind the fact that it was modernized for the most part. I think it mostly works. I didn't really care that much about it. I didn't really care that they didn't have British accents or spoke in really formal language, because this is a different kind of retelling here. They're trying to retell it in a more modern style, and I didn't really mind that. I think my issue with the dialogue here is that a lot of it can be very on the nose, which is kind of typical for Nolan. I don't think his screenplays are his strongest aspect in any of his movies, frankly. It's always his directing and his casts and his crafts and all of this and that. Usually the screenplay is like the worst part of a Nolan movie. I wouldn't say the screenplay is the worst part here. I think there's a lot of interesting ideas being explored, but I do think some of that dialogue is a little on the nose in terms of what it's exploring, what it's discussing. Now, when I did my cast breakdown, you might have noticed something. I did not mention Tom Holland. And that is because I think Tom Holland, and also the way his character is written, are the biggest weak points with this movie. Tom Holland gets outacted by every single screen partner he has. He doesn't really stand toe-to-toe with them, and he just feels kind of bland. Like, you'll have Anne Hathaway, like I said, giving an Oscar-worthy performance, and then Tom Holland will be like, yeah, I'm doing Tom Holland stuff. Oh, look at me, I'm on a real movie for the first time. It just doesn't really work that well, and I believe him as his character at first, but I don't really see how he acts to transform into what he should be by the end. And I think part of that is a screenwriting issue. I don't think they show enough of that character development, but I think a lot of it just has to do with the performance. I don't think it's a great performance. I don't think it's a horrible performance. Like, if every other actor was knocked down to Tom Holland's level, it'd be fine. It wouldn't be a poorly acted movie by any means, but it would be a very, who cares about the performances in that? And here I felt like Tom Holland just was not working at a level that so many of the other actors were working in, and it hurt his character for me, and it hurt the movie overall for me, since he has the second largest presence in it. And another thing I'd like to note, kind of related to what I was saying earlier about the character arcs, is that a lot of them do get kind of sidelined. It's mainly Odysseus' story, which makes a lot of sense, and his character arc is pretty fleshed out. And I'd say Penelope's is mostly fleshed out, even though you can definitely tell that there was more material that was left off the table. And it would have been nice to see a lot more of these characters fleshed out and given more screen time. I think the balancing act it pulls off is really well done, but I would have liked to see more. I honestly would have liked if this movie was maybe 3 hours and 30 minutes. I know maybe it's crazy to think that the general audience would go to a 3 hour and 30-minute movie, but it's not like those haven't existed. Like in recent years, we've had The Brutalist and Killers of the Flower Moon. Both of those were not like blockbuster huge, but they were big. They were big and they had audiences that wanted to go to them. And I feel like this story would have warranted that because I think it's already pretty well paced and it moves pretty quickly. And so I enjoyed that, but I would have liked to see just a little bit more development for everyone. Maybe it doesn't even need to be 30 minutes longer. Maybe it just needs to be like 15 minutes longer. And I think this is more of a nitpick. The third act, I was mostly on board for a lot of it. However, there's a big action sequence and it just keeps getting bigger. It keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it just got a little ridiculous to a point. It was too much for me to take seriously. Like I wasn't like laughing at it or anything, but it was too much for me to really take seriously for that amount of time and how things were going because I just didn't really fully believe it. However, that is a very small thing because I do think a lot of that third act works really well, particularly the ending, particularly the more quiet moments in that third act. It's just, yeah, that action scene, I think it could have been toned down an octave or two. Now, I will repeat myself since I just went through a lot of stuff that I didn't enjoy about the movie. I think The Odyssey is a great film. I think it is a great spectacle. It has great crafts. It has a great score, great cinematography, mostly great performances, and it moves really smoothly. It is one of the most entertaining movies in Nolan's catalog. It might be the most entertaining. I have really been wanting to go back to rewatch this. Unfortunately, I can't because tickets have been fucking booked like crazy. I don't think I've seen something to this level in quite a long time in terms of just how much these tickets are being booked. And I really want to see it again because it moves so well. And I feel like a lot of my smaller issues might be alleviated by going for a second watch. This is a very dense and impactful story, in my opinion. And a lot of it just holds so much weight. That's why it's taken so long for me to even write this review after seeing the movie. It's because I just needed to unpack and unravel everything that Christopher Nolan was trying to do here. And I think he mostly succeeds. There are some script issues here. There is, unfortunately, the Tom Holland performance, which feels miscast and often below the rest of the cast in general. And there's also some smaller elements to do with just how things are played out, with how some characters feel kind of sidelined here. But as a whole, I think this is magnificent. And now I'm doing something a little different here. If you've been on this channel before, normally I use this ratings board here. And personally, I liked it for a while because it was fun and cute and whatever. But I don't think that really articulates how I feel about something well enough because it only gives me 5 slots. And then a lot of the times, I only go to really see movies that I'm interested in. So generally speaking, it's going to be more so on the enjoyed it or loved it part of the scale. And so I think it'd be a lot better to just switch over to a plain number rating. And so I'm giving Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey a high 8/low 9. I think there is a lot here that is brilliant, even if it is undermined by some shortcomings here with the screenplay and some of the performances. I think this is an immensely told film. Anywho, have you had the chance to see The Odyssey? Like I said earlier, I know those movie theater tickets, they're fucking full for a lot of premium formats, so maybe you haven't yet. But if you have seen this movie, did you enjoy it? Also, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.